1985, newborn millennials had to follow a schedule of just a handful of vaccines. Today, a child following the recommended vaccine schedule will receive up to 70 shots by the time they turn 18, including 27 before he or she turns 2, and as many as 6 shots in a single visit. Are all these shots producing healthier kids? According to the data, no. Are we allowed to even ask? Also, no. Some parents who've asked too many questions about the recommended vaccine schedule can find themselves reported to Child Protection Services, or they will get kicked out of their pediatrician's office for not being compliant. This is America, the land of the free. Parents are being held hostage. They did not sign up to co-parent with the government. We want a divorce. If one of my listeners has a child today, there is a 1 in 50 chance that child will have a deadly peanut allergy, 4 times what it was just a few decades ago. And that rate is rising. Children today are about 20% more likely to develop type 1 diabetes than they were 20 years ago. Childhood cancer rates are rising a percentage point every year. Asthma is up, so is ADHD. Allergies, virtually every type of psychological disorder. In 1980, autism was diagnosed at a rate of just 3 or 4 per 100,000 kids. Today, a newborn child has a 1 in 36 chance that he or she will be autistic. And that rate is also rising every year. Who cares about politics if the next generation is dead or close to it before they can even vote?
And the young and old. Young adult cancers are up 79%, and 1 in 4 American women is on antidepressant medication. 40% of teens have a mental health diagnosis. 15% of high schoolers are on Adderall, and 500,000 American children are on SSRIs. No other country has anything like this. So what's causing all of this suffering? I'll name 2 culprits. First and worst is ultra-processed foods. 70% of American children's diets is now ultra-processed, which means industrial manufactured in a factory. These foods consist primarily of processed sugar, ultra-processed grain, and seed oils. Laboratory scientists, many of them whom were formerly working for the cigarette industry, which purchased all of the big food companies in the 1970s and 80s, deployed their thousands of scientists to invent new chemicals to make our food more addictive. And these ingredients didn't exist 100 years ago. Humans are not biologically adapted to eat them. Hundreds of these chemicals are now banned in Europe, but they are ubiquitous in American processed foods. We are literally poisoning our children systematically for profit. The second culprit is toxic chemicals in our food, our medicine, and our environment. Pesticides, food additives, pharmaceutical drugs, and toxic waste permeate every cell in our bodies. This assault on our children's cells and hormones is unrelenting. They are swimming around in a toxic soup. And to name just one problem, many of these chemicals increase estrogen. Because young children are ingesting so many of these hormone disruptors, America's fertility rate has now dropped. Sperm counts in teens are about 50% of what they were a couple of generations ago, and testosterone rates have dropped at the same rate. American puberty rates among our little girls is now 10 to 13 years of age. Our country has the earliest puberty rate of any continent. This is 6 years younger than it was in 1900. This is not normal. Breast cancer is also estrogen-driven and now strikes 1 in 8 women. We are mass poisoning all of our children and all of our adults. Industry lobbyists have made sure that most of the food stamp lunch program, about 70% of foods, that most of the school lunch program, and about 70% of food stamps are processed foods. We give 8 times as much subsidies to tobacco in this country than we do to fruits and vegetables. It makes no sense if we want a healthy country. The good news is that we can change all this, and we can change it very, very, very quickly. And it starts with taking a sledgehammer to corruption, to the conflicts in our regulatory agency and in this building. These conflicts have transformed our regulatory agencies into predators against the American people, and particularly our children. 80% of NIH grants go to people who have conflicts of interest. And these scientists are allowed to collect royalties of $150,000 a year on the products that they develop at NIH and then farm out to the pharmaceutical industry. The FDA, the USDA, and the CDC are all controlled by giant for-profit corporations. Their function is no longer to improve and protect the health of Americans. Their function is to advance the mercantile and commercial interests of the pharmaceutical industry that has transformed them, and the food industry that has transformed them into sock puppets for the industry they're supposed to regulate. 75% of FDA funding does not come from taxpayers. It comes from pharma. And pharma executives and consultants and lobbyists cycle in and out of these agencies. Money from the healthcare industry has compromised our regulatory agencies and to this body as well. The reality is that many congressional healthcare staffers are worried about impressing their future bosses at pharmaceutical companies rather than doing the right thing for American children. Today, over 100 members of Congress support a bill to fund Ozempic with Medicare at $1,500 a month. Most of these members have taken money from the manufacturer of that product, a European company called Novo Nordisk. As everyone knows, once a drug is approved for Medicare, it goes to Medicaid. And there is a push to recommend Ozempic for Americans as young as 6 over a condition, obesity, that is completely preventable and barely even existed 100 years ago. Since 74% of Americans are obese, the cost of all of them, if they take their Ozempic prescriptions, will be $3 trillion a year. This is a drug that has made Novo Nordisk the biggest company in Europe. It's a Danish company, but the Danish government does not recommend it. It recommends a change in diet to treat obesity and exercise. Virtually Novo Nordisk's entire value is based upon its projections of what Ozempic is going to sell to Americans. For half the price of Ozempic, we could purchase regeneratively raised organic agriculture, or organic food for every American, 3 meals a day, and gym membership for every obese American. Why are members of Congress doing the bidding of this Danish company instead of standing up for American farmers and children? Because Novo Nordisk is one of the largest funders of medical research, the media and politicians and the medical schools all go along with them. For 19 years, solving the childhood chronic disease crisis has been the central goal of my life. And for 19 years, I have prayed to God every morning to put me in a position to end this calamity. I believe we have the opportunity for transformational bipartisan change to transform American health, to hypercharge our human capital, to improve our budget, and I believe to save our spirits and our country. I am grateful for Senator Johnson's focus on this country's most important issue. Thank you.